The great Senate hall was quiet. The vast room was filled with thousands of seats, but today all eyes were fixed on a single man. The emperor sat at the high throne, calm and proud. The galaxy watched him through hundreds of live screens. It was a moment that no one could forget. Suddenly, the doors of the Senate burst open. A tall man stepped inside. His face was hard, his eyes full of fire. He walked slowly toward the emperor. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, like the calm before a storm. The man grabbed the emperor's arm and forced him to stand. The emperor looked surprised. His usual calm left his face. The man did not speak. He pulled the emperor down from the throne. The Senate was silent. The galaxy watched, silent too. The man dragged the emperor through the wide halls of the Senate. People gasped, but no one stopped him. The guards looked shocked. Some whispered quietly, but no one dared to speak loudly. It was as if the whole galaxy was frozen in fear. The emperor tried to pull free, but the man was strong. The man's grip was like iron. The emperor's robes dragged on the marble floor. The sound echoed in the empty hall. The man's face was serious. He was not afraid of the emperor's power. Slowly, the man moved the emperor closer to the Senate floor. The seats around were full of senators. They watched quietly. Some looked angry, some scared. But no one stood up to help the emperor. A man stopped in front of the Senate. He let go of the emperor's arm. The emperor stood alone, his face pale. The man raised his hand and spoke loudly. The voice echoed through the Senate hall. "People of the galaxy," he said, "today you will hear the truth about the emperor, the truth that he has hidden for many years." The emperor looked around, his eyes burned with anger. He wanted to speak, but the man raised his hand again and silenced him. "For too long," the man said, "the emperor has ruled with lies and fear. He has hurt many people. He has made the galaxy suffer." The senators whispered among themselves. Some looked shocked, others confused. The man smiled coldly. He knew his words had power. "Today," he continued, "I will show you the secret that the emperor wanted to hide. The secret that will change the future of the galaxy." The emperor's face turned red with rage. He stepped forward to speak, but the man held up a small device. A bright light shone from it. The device showed images on the large screens around the hall. The images were clear. They showed the emperor ordering attacks on peaceful planets. They showed soldiers burning homes and families running in fear. The galaxy watched in horror. The emperor tried to deny the images, but the proof was strong. The man's voice was calm but firm. "Is this the ruler you want?" he asked the Senate. "A man who destroys his own people to keep power?" The senators looked at each other. The silence was deep. No one answered. The galaxy held its breath. The man turned to the emperor. "You cannot hide anymore. The truth is out." The emperor's face was full of pain. He knew his time was ending. The man reached out and grabbed his arm again. Slowly, he dragged the emperor down the steps and out of the Senate hall. The galaxy watched, silent but full of questions. What would happen next? Would the emperor fight back? Would the man bring justice? The doors closed behind them. The silence in the Senate was louder than ever. The galaxy waited for the next move. Outside, the man looked at the stars. He thought about the long fight ahead. The galaxy was watching. The time for change had come. The galaxy was still quiet after the shocking event in the Senate. Everyone was waiting for the emperor's answer. The man who had dragged him was gone from the hall, but his words stayed in the air like a heavy cloud. No one could forget what they had seen on the screens. The secret was out. Inside a small room behind the Senate, the emperor sat alone. His hands were shaking slightly. He stared at the wall, but his mind was far away. He knew the man had shown the truth to the galaxy. There was no turning back now. Suddenly, the door opened. A young senator stepped in quietly. She looked nervous but determined. The emperor looked up and nodded slowly. He was surprised she had come to him. I know what you showed the Senate, she said softly. And I know the people are scared. But there is more to this story. You must listen. The Emperor leaned forward. Tell me, he said quietly. I am ready. The senator took a deep breath. You were once a hero. You saved many worlds during the old wars. But time changed you. Power changed you. The man who dragged you showed the pain you caused. But there are those who still believe you can bring peace. The Emperor's eyes flickered with hope. How can I change their minds? He asked. The senator smiled. By showing them your true heart. Not as a ruler, but as a leader who listens. At that moment, the doors opened again. The man who had dragged the Emperor appeared. He looked tired but calm. His eyes met the senator's, and then the Emperor's. I hear there is talk of hope, he said. But hope must be earned. The Emperor stood slowly. I want to prove myself, he said. Not with words, but with actions. The man nodded. Then you will come with me. You will see the galaxy outside the Senate halls. You will face the people you have hurt. The Emperor looked at the young senator. She nodded. This is the only way. The three of them left the room together. The galaxy watched as the Emperor stepped down from his throne for the first time in years. The silence was broken by whispers of surprise and curiosity. Outside the Senate, a ship waited. It was small but strong. The man led the Emperor and senator aboard. The ship lifted off quickly and flew toward the outer worlds. As the ship moved, through the stars, the Emperor looked out the window. He saw planets he had ruled but never visited. He saw cities full of people who feared him. His heart ached. The man sat beside him. You will meet some of these people soon, he said. They will tell you their stories. You must listen. The Emperor nodded. I am ready. The first stop was a small mining planet. The ship landed near a village where workers lived in simple homes. The people gathered around, watching the visitors with mixed feelings. An old woman stepped forward. Her face was kind but tired. We heard about you, she said softly. The Emperor who once promised us a better life. The Emperor looked at her. I want to understand. Tell me what went wrong. The woman sighed. The mines were dangerous. Many lost their lives. We asked for help, but no one came. We were forgotten. The Emperor's eyes filled with sadness. I did not know, he whispered. The man watched quietly. This is just the beginning, he said. There are many more stories like this. The Emperor spent days visiting planets, meeting people from every corner of the galaxy. Some were angry, some hopeful, some silent. Each story was a mirror to his past failures. Slowly, the Emperor began to change. He saw that ruling with fear had only built walls between him and his people. He understood that to lead, he must listen first. But not everyone wanted change. Back in the Senate, some powerful leaders plotted to keep things the same. They saw the Emperor's journey as weakness. They prepared to stop him. The galaxy watched as a new chapter began. The Emperor was no longer just a ruler on a throne. He was a man walking among his people, searching for a way to heal the wounds of the past. The question remained, would the galaxy accept this new path, or was the old order too strong to break? The silence of the Senate was gone. Now the galaxy waited for the answer. The trial began in the great Senate hall. Senators filled the seats, their faces showing tension and curiosity. The galaxy watched through the many screens, waiting to see what would happen next. This trial was unlike any before. The Emperor, once untouchable, now faced questions that could change everything. The man who had dragged the Emperor stepped forward. His voice was steady and clear. Today, we will hear the truth. The people deserve to know the real story. The Emperor sat quietly, his face calm but his eyes sharp. He listened as the prosecutor spoke, showing evidence of the Emperor's decisions. The images showed mistakes and harsh orders, but the man also spoke about hope and change. Senators whispered among themselves. Some looked shocked. Others seemed angry. The atmosphere was heavy with silence and expectation. The emperor stood when it was his turn. "I have ruled for many years," he said softly. "I admit my errors, but I have also worked to protect this galaxy. I am ready to answer your questions." The first witness came forward. A former guard spoke of loyalty to the emperor, but also of fear and regret. His story showed the struggle inside the palace, between duty and conscience. As more witnesses spoke, the truth became clearer. The emperor had made hard choices, but some were wrong. The people had suffered, but there were moments of kindness and care. Outside the hall, the galaxy was divided. Some cheered for justice, others feared what would come next. The silence was broken by voices of hope and doubt. The man who had brought the emperor here watched carefully. He knew the trial was not just about truth. It was about the future of the galaxy. The emperor looked at the senators. "I ask for your judgment," he said, "but also for a chance to make things right." The senators whispered again. The decision was near. Suddenly, a new witness appeared. A young woman, unknown to many, stepped forward. She spoke of secret plans to harm the emperor and the galaxy. Her words shocked everyone. The trial took a new turn. The battle was no longer just about the emperor. It was about the unseen forces trying to keep the galaxy in fear. The man and the emperor looked at each other. They knew the fight was far from over. The trial ended for the day. The galaxy waited, watching and wondering what the next day would bring. The silence was gone. The future was uncertain. But one thing was clear. The galaxy was awake, and nothing would be the same again. The room was dim and filled with whispers that seemed louder than any shout. The emperor sat quietly, feeling the weight of every glance, every unspoken question. The Senate's chambers, once a place of order and rules, now felt like a stage for secrets and shadows. Outside, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The mysterious witness from the trial had spoken words that shook the foundation of the Senate. Her voice had carried a secret no one had expected, a betrayal hidden deep within the emperor's closest circle. The senators whispered urgently, eyes darting between each other, unsure whom to trust. The emperor's trusted advisors, those who had stood by him for years, suddenly seemed different. Their calm faces hid something darker. The man who had dragged the emperor watched closely, sensing the tension rising like a storm about to break. He knew this betrayal was more dangerous than anything they had faced before. In the quiet hallways, behind the Senate, secret meetings began. Shadows moved silently as plans were made in hushed tones. The emperor's inner circle was not as united as it once appeared. Some feared the truth, others wanted to keep the power they had. The emperor felt the walls closing in. The betrayal was not just about politics. It was about loyalty, trust, and the very future of the galaxy. He wondered who among his closest allies could truly be trusted. Every word, every smile now held a question. Meanwhile, the man who had become the emperor's unlikely companion knew the importance of this moment. He suggested they leave the Senate's safety to understand the galaxy better. "We must find those who suffer in silence," he said. "Only by seeing the truth, with our own eyes, can we begin to heal." The emperor agreed. They left the city behind, traveling to distant worlds where the forgotten people lived. On these planets, the emperor heard stories no Senate speech could tell. Stories of hope and fear, courage and pain. One evening, on a quiet world filled with tall trees and soft winds, the emperor and the man met with a small group of rebels. These were not enemies, but people longing for peace. They spoke honestly about their struggles and dreams. The emperor listened, his heart heavy but open. He realized that leadership was not about power or control, but about understanding and connection. The galaxy was more than politics. It was people's lives, hopes, and futures. Back in the Senate, the betrayal had caused divisions. Some senators demanded immediate action, while others whispered of compromise and peace. The man who had dragged the emperor knew that this moment could change everything. if they chose the right path. As the sun set over the distant world, the Emperor looked to the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of light and darkness. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time he felt a true chance for change. The silence of the past was breaking. The galaxy was waking. The fight was not with swords or armies, but with trust, truth, and hope. And so the journey continued, deeper into the unknown, where the greatest battles were yet to come, not of power, but of the heart. The galaxy no longer whispered. It questioned. Every citizen, from the shining cities of the core to the quiet moons on the edge of the map, asked the same thing. Would the Emperor change, or was this just another act in a long game of control? Stars blinked overhead as the Emperor walked, slowly through a silent village on a cold planet. The wind blew gently, carrying the smell of burning wood and the soft murmur of voices behind closed doors. These were not royal halls or polished chambers, just homes. Homes of people who once looked to the Empire for safety but had long stopped expecting anything at all. Beside him walked the same man who had pulled him down from the throne weeks ago. They spoke little now. Their bond had shifted. It was no longer built on conflict, but something much more difficult: shared purpose. The man stopped near a broken fountain in the village center. This was a place of joy, he said. Before the promises became silence, the Emperor looked around. He saw cracked walls, worn clothing, tired eyes, but beneath it all, he saw strength. Not the kind that made speeches or ruled armies, but the kind that survived. A woman approached holding a small child. She didn't bow. She didn't speak with fear. "You say you want to change," she said. "Then show us by staying, not speaking. Stay and help repair the school. Help fix the heating lines. No guards, no reporters. Just you." The Emperor looked at the man beside him. The man didn't answer. He didn't need to. The next morning, the Emperor rolled up his sleeves. It was not easy work. His hands were not used to the weight of tools, but he worked quietly. He listened. He followed instructions. Children watched from the side, unsure whether to laugh or stare in awe. For 3 days, he stayed. He learned names. He shared meals. He fixed broken things, but more importantly, he repaired something invisible: trust. Far away, the Senate continued its meetings. News of the Emperor's visit spread quickly, dividing the chambers. Some said it was a clever trick. Others saw it as a sign that something real was changing. But change is rarely easy, and not everyone welcomed it. In the deeper corners of the Empire, some powerful voices grew louder. Hidden networks of influence built over decades now feared losing their grip. They did not want a humble emperor. They wanted silence, control, and order. They began planning their own moves, slow, careful, hidden behind polite smiles and coded words. Back in the village, the Emperor sat beside the repaired fountain, now flowing again with clean water. The child from before ran up to him and handed him a small carved stone. "You fixed our heater," the child said. "Now it's warm again." He took the stone, holding it gently. "Thank you," he said softly. "This means more than you know." That night, under the stars, the Emperor met with the man again. "They don't want power," he said. "They want someone to care." The man nodded. "But there are still those who care only for power." The Emperor knew he had to return to the Senate, not as a ruler, but as a messenger. He had seen the truth with his own eyes, heard the real stories, and felt the pain of the people. When they returned, the Senate was already buzzing with talk of resistance. Some leaders were afraid that the people were waking up, afraid that an emperor who listened was more dangerous than one who commanded. The Emperor walked back into the chamber. This time no crown, no robe, just a voice and a choice. He raised his hand and the room fell quiet. "I have no speech," he said. "Only stories. I have sat with farmers, slept beside broken heaters, and eaten food made with care by hands. calloused by survival. They don't want glory. They want fairness. They want to be heard. The senators shifted in their seats. I will not return to rule over them. I will stand beside them. And if this Senate cannot do the same, then the galaxy will move on without it. The room was silent, not from fear, but from reflection. Outside, screens across planets lit up. The people watched the Emperor stand alone in a hall once filled with empty words, now echoing with something stronger, truth. And far in the shadows, those who feared this moment began to make their move. But the galaxy had already started to awaken. The next step was near, and nothing would be the same again. The light of dawn broke slowly across the capital. From space, the city looked peaceful, calm towers of glass and metal reflecting the early glow. But inside the walls of power, change stirred like a quiet storm. The Senate building stood tall, yet uncertain. For the first time in generations, people no longer whispered about power behind closed doors. They asked for answers openly. The Emperor's simple speech had spread across the stars like a message written in fire. And now, everyone waited for the final decision. Would the old ways return, or would something new rise? Inside his quarters, the Emperor sat alone. No crown, no throne, just silence and thought. He looked out at the skyline, remembering every face he had met in the past weeks. The woman who had challenged him, the children who laughed with cautious hope, the villages where he had seen life stripped bare and rebuilt with care. A knock echoed through the quiet room. The man who had once dragged him into the Senate stood at the door. He did not bow. He never had. But now he didn't need to. Respect was no longer forced, it was earned. They've gathered, the man said softly. The Emperor nodded. Let's give them what they came for. They walked through the long hallway together, past guards who now stood not as barriers, but as protectors of peace. Every step echoed like a drumbeat, not of war but of transformation. The Senate was full, every seat occupied. The galaxy watched once more. When the Emperor entered, the room did not rise in ceremony. Instead, there was a quiet stillness, deep and waiting. I stand before you not to rule, he said clearly, but to finish a journey we started together. He placed a simple device on the center table, a memory crystal. Inside it, the recordings of his travels, voices of the people, images of broken cities, moments of healing and truth. It was not a speech. It was a story. Their story. The senators watched in silence. As the images played, many looked away, unable to meet the gaze of the people they had forgotten. Others watched with tears, their faces marked by guilt and understanding. When the crystal dimmed, the Emperor spoke again. We cannot lead if we do not listen. We cannot protect if we do not understand. And we cannot grow if we continue to fear change. A senator stood, one of the oldest. And what would you have us do? The Emperor paused. Then he smiled gently. Step aside, if you cannot walk forward. Let those who still dream take the lead. Murmurs rose. Some protested, others nodded slowly. The chamber was divided, not by anger, but by time, between those clinging to the past and those willing to reach for something better. Then from the crowd a young senator stood. Her voice trembled, but only for a moment. I have never known a galaxy without fear, she said. But I want to. Let us build it, not alone, together. One by one others stood with her, not in defiance but in unity. The old walls began to crack, not from force but from something stronger. Hope. Outside the chamber, across countless worlds, the people waited. And slowly, word spread. A new council would be formed, not of titles, but of voices. A circle of leaders chosen by the people for the people. The Emperor stepped down from the platform and joined the others. He was no longer above them. He was one of them. Later that evening, he returned to the quiet part of the city. The man was there, again watching the stars. They listened, the man said. They did, the emperor replied. And now, the real work begins. They stood in silence for a long time. Far above, the stars blinked as if they too were watching. And somewhere in the distance, a child turned on a screen, smiled at the image of a once feared leader standing beside those he once ruled, and whispered, "Maybe tomorrow will be different." And so the story did not end with power reclaimed or battles won. It ended with hands extended, voices raised, and a galaxy choosing, for the first time in a long time, to walk forward not as rulers and ruled, but as one.